Thanks for the intro.
Welcome to the Camo and Hooks podcast. This is Mike.
And this is Luke.
All right, let's get into the big questions. The big questions, the philosophical questions. Let's get deep. Let's learn. Let's learn about each other.
All right.
Let's explore. All right. Why? That's the question here. Why would two men in their 30s with no true strong history of hunting and fishing, why just decide to turn it on and start doing that? Why just say, this is now my hobby. This is something I'm passionate about. I'm going to go all in, and I'm going to spend my time and my money doing this.
Because after 15 years, I'm still shooting 105 on the golf course.
Ah, there it is. So it's a process of elimination of all the things we fail at. It's like, you know what I could be good at now that I'm old?
Yeah.
That does become a bigger part of the selection process for me picking hobbies now. It's like, well, I'm not 27.
Yeah.
So sports.
What hobby can I have where the work that I'm doing generally consists of watching YouTube videos? Hunting and fishing.
That is the dream. And then where is there a hobby where there's the possibility that I could just go sit out by myself somewhere quiet for several hours?
Where there's no children.
Whom we love dearly.
They're the meaning of life.
She's coming. Hey.
What hobby can I have where I can spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of my wife's salary?
The curse of the kept man.
Yeah.
I have to have a way to spend this. Otherwise, what am I doing in this marriage?
Right. If I don't spend it, she's going to reduce my budget in the next fiscal year.
That's true. That's smart thinking. That's how this whole thing works.
No, but why is, I don't know, somewhere along the way, I realized that, while I personally and, maybe my family in general don't have that rich history of hunting and fishing, although my dad did it when I was really young, and I remember that, but that's about the exposure that I had. Growing up in Texas, like, that's what everybody else was doing.
Mm-hmm.
My buddies, a lot of my buddies were off on hunting trips on the weekends, or they were, heading out to the lake after school or whatever, and I wasn't, and I don't know why I didn't get into it then. I wish I would have. Hindsight's 20/20, I guess, but, I guess it just finally hit me that, like, this is part of who we are as humans.
Right.
This is how we got to the top.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Suck it, animals. Was by learning how to hunt and fish them. Also just, you kind of joked about sitting outside by yourself, but I wanted to be outside more.
Yeah.
Get outside and not just sit in my backyard. Really get outside.
Yeah.
And hunting and fishing is a great way to do that. And then, of course, with my background in culinary, knowing where the food comes from, seeing that food from not farm to table,
wilderness to table,
forest to table, water to table. Like, take it a step farther, and really get your hands in there and see where that food comes from and process it. Even if you're not really processing it yourself. A lot of people are still going to be dropping their stuff off at a processor, but to have taken that animal yourself, and you're going to, generally, if we're talking about deer, you're going to gut it and then take it to the processor. So you've still got your hands on that meat, on that animal, and you've done the first part. And then maybe somebody else turns it into delicious freezer treats for you. And then you get to cook it and serve it to your family, but you still have the heaviest hand in that process.
You selected that animal.
Correct. And I think it teaches you a lot more respect for where your food comes from. And it adds a big sense of pride when you sit down to dinner to eat that animal. You had a hand in that, and I think kind of all of those things together just kind of are what kicked me into gear.
Yeah, and for you,
wanting to really get into this.
For you, I can see that extension very naturally because you're always working on mastery of cooking, of being a chef, of preparing food, and I think you've always taken a lot of pride in that, and being the person who prepares food and brings meals to people and has them try flavors and like introduces them to things and does things with care and craft. And I really think that's a natural extension for you. That's a very natural extension to just say, okay, now I'm in control of the source of my proteins.
Yeah.
Like you're the type of guy, like if you had a garden in your backyard, I would not bat an eye and be like, yeah, it makes sense. He wants to be in control of that.
I've tried so many times.
Really? It's Texas though.
I am a serial killer of vegetables at this point.
Nice. Well, then maybe take that killer mentality and apply that to hunting. Maybe that makes more sense.
So you just want me to water the deer in 105-degree heat until they die?
I mean, I'm not saying it wouldn't work. So, for me, a lot of the same. It's hard to not parrot that exactly, but I do have a couple of different, I guess, lines of thinking or maturity that have brought me there. And, there's a big part of me, like you talked about, wanting to get more in touch with where your food comes from, more responsibility over it. And that's kind of a theme that's happened more and more in my life is I don't want as much stuff done for me. I've said that before. I don't want the work done for me anymore. Mm-hmm. I want to do the work myself. I want to use my productivity, the energy that I have, the health, the time that I have, and I want to put that into things that I care about. Yeah. Or that nourish other people, or that nourish them either, mentally, emotionally, or physically. Those things are important, and it's like a cool way of giving back. That's a big nebulous one, but in just terms of like personal fulfillment, look, I was really into physical and cultural anthropology when I was in college, and seeing time and time again the importance of hunting, not just in providing food. Like the importance of hunting for the development of humanity, the development of the human mind, of societies, and how important and how key that was, and how much we lost touch with that. Mm-hmm. There's a great film ethnographer named Robert Gardner, and I think Killing Birds is the kind of his most well-known one, but there are several, and one that he's involved in, I cannot remember the name for the life of me, but there's a popular clip on YouTube of it as well, where they show a group of hunters that are tracking an animal, and these are true hunter-gatherers. These are people, they're modern hunter-gatherers. These are people, minimal clothing, handmade bows and spears.
And indigenous people
indigenous people in Africa. I think they're pygmies. They're African pygmies. Okay. So, and
I hope you guys have your floaties on. I think we're about to get deep. We're going to the deep end.
I told you, right into the big questions. But it showed them track the animal. And now, obviously, this particular clip was heavily edited, because this is a days-long, weeks-long process, right. And it's hard to get that footage. But it kind of shows you the process of them, the men of that tribe, working together, stalk an animal. They spook it, and they start chasing it. And they have a runner that chases it for miles and miles and miles and miles. All he does is just run at a slow pace. People forget that. We think of ourselves as not being specialists in the animal world, that we have no skills. You got to remember, a human being can run longer than any animal in the world. We're terrifying to animals.
Not this human being.
Right. Some of them. And you say that, but even the least conditioned human being is an endurance stud in the animal kingdom for the most part. Like, we can run and stalk and run and walk at a slow pace and keep moving. You watch animals do that, they burst and they get exhausted and they have to collapse and recover. So they track it down. Long story short, they do that. They track it down and they make the killing blow, and all the animal can do is sit there because it's exhausted. But they have some cool scenes in between where he loses the trail, and you have to see him stop and put his mind into the mind of the animal. And not in like a spiritual sense. I'm saying like just how you would do when you're following a blood trail and you might lose it. Like, you have to stop and think, what would it do next?
Yeah.
We take that for granted. That's a very unique skill. And so it's getting in touch with those things that made us very human, that mind-reading mechanism, the problem solving, all that sort of stuff. I wanted to get more in touch with that instead of just knowing it because I saw it, because I learned it in college. Like, I want to actually feel that. There's something very visceral and primal about that gets me more in touch. I guess it strips away a lot of the layers. And this goes back to, like you said, being outside. I like being outside for a reason.
Yeah.
I like, hiking is cool. Exploring and backpacking is cool. I have no beef with anybody that does that. It's just not my jam. It's not my
Right.
cup of tea
Yeah,
or
it's
my
not for
jam.
me.
Sounds delicious, all this, by the way.
Tea and jam.
But we've hiked miles and miles and miles at Lake Georgetown in the past couple of weeks. And I've never had a minute where I've complained or felt bad, even my feet hurt, because I'm outside for a purpose.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm pursuing something. And that feels really, really good, is to have that purpose. And I think the final one coming back for me is, I feel like it's the most primal form of being an athlete. It's the most primal form of athletics in humanity, because most sports are finding some way to utilize in a modern, acceptable, non-bloody way our propensity to make war and to hunt. All those skills that we learned from making war and hunting, we can't really use anymore. Yeah. So we have football, we have games, we have mixed martial arts, we have boxing, we have those things that is men's desire to go get something with our body, take it, and like conquer, or to like bring something back and achieve or provide. And we don't get that, and I don't think you need to shy away from that. I think that's not toxic. That's not a bad thing. Hunting is a very healthy way to do that, in my mind. It's a very healthy way to use all those human skills that we built up, and then use that drive that I have to conquer, to make war, to hunt, use those things for what they're really meant for, and then I get to serve it to my family.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool feeling, man. And it's just seeking simplicity. And that's funny that it took me 7 minutes to get there, but it's seeking simplicity. It's more simple. It takes less layers. It takes layers of complication out of my life in terms of my food.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though it seems simpler to run down to the grocery store and pick up some ground beef, from, your primal beginning, it's simpler to use what's already in you. Yeah. Because you're not born just knowing how to drive a car, how to spend money, that sort of thing. You're born knowing how to find food, however you have to do it.
Yeah, that's perfectly said, and that's where all those drives come from, and those are the things that we've passed on to each other over and over and over again. Generations we pass on, like sharpen a stick, it'll help.
Yeah, the other thing about this is, I talked about my dad doing hunting and fishing a lot when I was a kid, and he kind of stopped when I got old enough to do it. I want to be able to hunt and fish with my kids.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a way of, hanging out and bonding, that a lot of people are losing.
Yeah.
Obviously there are places where people are still, doing it, but, in general, we're spending more time with our kids, at a soccer game, right, or, whatever.
Like, how would you rather teach your kid problem solving?
Patience.
Patience, right?
Oh, patience.
Yeah.
Swear words.
And that it's okay. There's a deep, rich dictionary.
Oh yeah.
Of swear words, but that it's okay to be uncomfortable for a while. You're going to be okay.
And that it's okay to fail.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It's okay to fail, and you're going to more often than not.
Absolutely.
Like, you're going to fail most of the time.
We're going to go fishing, and we're not going to catch any fish. Especially if you're fishing with me.
You need to go with Uncle Greg.
Yeah,
he'll show you what it's like to actually get a.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg. Thanks for teaching my kid how to fish, Greg. Greg makes another cameo.
He does. I feel like we should just never bring him on. I feel like the precedent that's been set for Greg now is so high that meeting him is just going to be a downer for anybody.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is the guy? This is the infallible fisherman? The infallible fisherman.
Ooh. That's a YouTube channel.
That is a YouTube channel.
Yeah, no, I want to be able to share that with my kids. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I've taken my daughter fishing. She's almost 5. I've taken her fishing a bunch. Not so into it just yet.
That's okay.
And I'm hoping that's because we've been unsuccessful and not because she's just never going to like it.
Yeah.
I think I gotta find a sweet spot where I know we're gonna pull some fish out. And I think, I've talked to my buddy Ken. He's got 3 daughters, and they all love to fish. they're into hunting as well. And I asked him, man, how'd you get your girls into fishing? He said, man, stock ponds.
Yeah. Yank, yank, yank. Yep,
Yeah.
just here they go.
Yeah, so I want to be able to share that with my kids. Not only the hunting and fishing, but the processing, the knowing where your food comes from, the knowing how to prepare your own food, how to find it, how to kill it, how to process it, how to cook it from start to finish, and not just kind of grow up having everything done for them. Just like you just said. I don't want them to wait till they're 35 to decide that they don't want everything done for them anymore.
Right.
I want them to grow up with a sense of, I don't want everything done for me.
That's right. And I know how to pick the pieces apart of any problem and figure out how to start doing it myself. That's a big deal. And even if they don't grow up to be hunters, I'm okay with them just being aware that that's how things are done. Like if my son and my daughters, they grow up and they decide like, hunting's not really how I want to spend my time. But just them knowing and having seen that when I eat an animal, this is where it comes from. Or when I get food, this is part of the process. Or that
if just in life, something doesn't happen as quickly as I want it to happen. If I have to wait for something. If I face a challenge to get to that thing. Right. If I have to work hard to get what I want. Right? You can extrapolate we did get deep.
I know, right?
You can extrapolate so many lessons from hunting. Yeah, like life lessons.
If your Uber gets delayed, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's going to be fine. It'll be there eventually.
Just give him 4 stars, though. I mean,
yeah. Oh, no, definitely.
Yeah. He deserves it.
Deserves.
That's a hard word, deserves. And that opens a whole other can of worms, too, that we could, whole nother, I apologize. A whole nother can of worms that we could talk about maybe in a future episode is that word deserve, because I feel like that's one of the most dangerous words in the English language.
What we deserve.
What you deserve. And we'll leave it as a teaser to say that I think this hobby, hunting and fishing, will quickly cure you of deserve.
I believe it.
All right, that will about wrap it up for us today. So you can find us on Instagram at Camo and Hooks. You can go to camoandhooks.com and find all the previous episodes of the podcast. We are also on iTunes. We're on Google Play. And if you would like to watch the podcast on YouTube, you can leave comments there. We love those. We love it if you answer questions, or if you have questions for us, go ahead and post them there. So we will see you next time.
Bye.